Hello, welcome, and happy Tuesday. You are live with It's All About Choices, a holistic nutrition, fitness, and weight management academy where you make the decision to take action regarding your weight and health goals, and I guide you to making the best choices for you. Every Tuesday, I have the pleasure of dishing out your daily dose of nutrition and wellness news for the mind, the body, and your soul. And so I hope everybody is having a wonderful day so far. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. And for those who are tuning in live with me today, I thank you for taking time out of your day. Hopefully, you are having some lunch to join in today with, I think it's going to serve as a very interesting topic today. And for those who are listening to the replay, I thank you for pausing, taking time out to listen in and to tune in. And so before I jump in, I am going to get my window set up for you so that when you make a comment, I will hear it, I'll be able to read it, and I'll be able to refer to you. So I like to have these sessions very interactive. I love engagement. So do not hesitate to give me a shout out, to ask questions, to make comments. And we're just going to have a little fun, okay? We're just going to have a little fun. And so we are continuing our series on favorite topics. And this month, it's been all about bringing back some of your favorite topics that you really enjoyed, that you engaged in. And so I really want to make this platform as insightful and as helpful for you as possible. And so today we are talking about what processed foods really mean. Okay. Are all processed foods bad for you, and do they hinder your weight loss? So that's what we're going to talk more and more about. And so processed foods. So they have a bad reputation, right, as being a diet sabotager. And so processed foods are linked to cancer, allergies, the obesity epidemic, high blood pressure, diabetes, and other negative health outcomes. And in many cases, it's true, especially if it's done over an extended period of time and you don't have enough of the good stuff that the body really can use to thrive off of. So think about purchasing organic or eating raw vegetables or going vegan, okay? Meaning no meat, no poultry, no fish, no eggs, no dairy. Is the all natural path. And is that a way to eliminate processed foods in your diet? So I want you to give that some thought. So if you're going organic, you're eating raw veggies, you're going vegan, are those non-processed foods? What do you think? Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. And so I want you to chime in and share with me, what you think about all of that. And so for those who do not know me, and while you're chiming in, I see people chiming in, say hello to me, tell me where you're tuning in from, and give me your thoughts on what processed foods means to you. Go ahead and chime in on that one as well. And so my name is Sandra Recommends, and I am a registered dietitian, and I'm also a certified personal trainer, and I love to serve as you all's accountability partner. And so today, my goal simply, or every day, my goal is simply to just help you to achieve your ideal weight, your health, your eating, and life goals so that you feel really good about yourself and that you enjoy doing the things that you enjoy doing. So that's simply my mission for each and every one of you. And in 2022, I've been talking a lot about breaking those food strongholds. Okay, so chime in as we move forward. So I will just continue to check for comments. So don't hesitate. I like for things to be interactive. And so for those that are tuning in, I see a few people coming on. Our topic today is specifically what processed foods really mean. Are processed foods, are they all bad for us? Are they all bad, and do they hinder our weight loss? And so my first question I like to pose and poll you all. Intrigued, type intrigued if you're interested, if your interest has been piqued about healthy food versus processed food. We tend to have tags like good food and bad food. And so let's talk about this healthy food versus processed food. So are you intrigued to kind of hear a little bit more about that? So we will start to talk about, and you just go ahead and chime in, and I will look back at the slight delay in your comments and when I ask you to post stuff. So what are processed foods? So let's just talk about in brief what processed food really means. So you probably heard that it's best to, you reduce your intake of processed foods and you'll live longer. You'll have your healthiest life. And so before we get into what makes a food highly processed, it's important to understand that foods aren't unhealthy just because they're processed in some way. Just about everything, just about all foods are processed, at least to some extent. So, for example, manufacturers process dried beans to make them shelf stable. Okay, this does not make them less healthy, but there is a level of processing that is done. And so to make it easier to understand food processing, researchers have separated foods into four categories. Okay, so they're in four categories based on the extent of processing. And so these classifications I'm going to share, and I share it with my clients as a spectrum or range of processed foods. You have your minimal, even the spinach, the raw spinach that you buy in the bag, that's processed, but it's a minimal level of processing to highly processed. And then you have, and so there's a food classification system that I'm going to share that kind of breaks this down pretty good. So I found this to be pretty easy. So let's say group one. Group one is your minimal processed, and in some cases unprocessed. Now for unprocessed, truly you are like pulling it out of the ground. You have a garden, you're making your vegetables and your fruits and things like that. So that's unprocessed. And so minimal processed are like your vegetables, your fruits, your grains, your beans, your nuts generally fall into this category, especially when you, of course, when you're buying them from the store, you're buying them from a food market or things of that nature. These foods have gone through some kind of roasting or boiling or pasteurization to increase its shelf life or to just make them safe to eat. Everything is not safe to eat right out of the ground, right? And so number two, you have processed culinary ingredients. Okay, so they're obtained directly from group one, or they're derived from group one, and this can include foods such as olive oil, maple syrup, salt, things like that. So group number two are mainly used in the preparation and in the cooking of a lot of the foods that we mentioned in group one. And then we have group three, which is processed. So we have processed foods. And this includes items made by adding ingredients like salt and sugar or some other substances to from either groups one and two foods. So for example, fresh bread, fruits, syrup, cheese. So those are some examples. So we're adding additional things to those particular foods. And then you have group four, which is highly processed. So we call it ultra processed. Sometimes people say ultra processed or also highly processed. And so these contain if any, little, if any of the foods that were listed in from group one or the ingredients that were listed in group one. So these are meant to be convenient. So these are foods that are more convenient, highly palatable. They're generally low cost. They're generally high in sugar. They're refined grains. So think of white flour, white pasta, things like that. Fats, your saturated fats, so not your heart healthy fats, preservatives and salts and things like that. And a lot of this is to extend the shelf life. Okay. So that is on a very, very high level. And looks like I see some comments. So let me see what we see here. Intrigue. Yes, yes, Sora. I see you. How you doing today? And it is. It's very interesting. So when I hear people say, what's really funny is, oh, I cut out processed foods. I cut out sugar. I cut out. It's You really didn't. It's very difficult to do that, but you want to eat as whole as possible. That's really what clean eating is. It's not about restricting. It's not about cutting out, but eating clean is eating foods more in their whole state. And like I said, even there is some level of processing, but it's very, very minimal. Very, very minimal. And so if you are surprised, let's go in here. If you're surprised, um, are you surprised to hear that fruits and vegetables and grains, it depends on the grains because we know bread is a level of processed food. So that's a common food that people cut out. Beans or nuts are processed. Okay. They're processed. I mean, think about when you buy salty nuts. I mean, nuts are not salty naturally. That's been added. So those are things that have been added. Even vegetables. So a lot of times with vegetables, it depends on how you purchase them. Like if you purchase them frozen or if you purchase them in this natural juices, which is fine. It's a minimal level of processing, but sometimes ascorbic acid is added to that, which is vitamin C, which extends it extends the shelf life for it. It preserves the color and things of that nature. But it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because it's also vitamin C as well. So they are minimally processed, yet they're still processed. Okay, and so it's important to note that there's some gray area sometimes between what is highly processed. And so, for example, I like to talk about breakfast cereals. Okay. And so, breakfast cereals, especially the cold ones, we're not talking about oatmeal and things like that, even though we know there's the packets are processed. But we're talking more of the cold cereal where it's quickly tagged as highly processed. However, it depends when you talk to certain healthcare experts, they don't consider some cereals highly processed, which they're not. So you got some cereals that have no added sugar. And then I generally use the rule, hey, if the sugar added is in single digits per serving, you're not doing so bad. I mean, because you gotta live. Food is for fun, and food is for nutrition. And so it's probably ongoing a minimum amount of processing. Now, of course, we have our highly processed, which is generally what the kids like to eat, but we want to recognize that not everything in a box is highly processed, and not everything in a box is not healthy. So you have to read the label, and you have to know what to look for, and ignore the marketing hype, and know really what the label is saying and what it's not saying. Okay. And so, and one good indication of falling in a more highly processed end of the spectrum is a lot of times we say, hey, if the food that's in the ingredient list is not really part of your preparation process at home. So that's kind of one gauge. Some people will say, hey, if you can't pronounce the words, then that's probably a sign that it's highly processed. But it depends, because some of those words that you can't pronounce or you're not familiar with are plant-based. So it just depends on what it is. So again, you have to know what the label is really saying and what it's not really saying. Okay. All righty, let me check for some comments. Okay, so I have some. Krista says she is surprised. Yes, it's very surprising. And so here we go. So here are some some familiar things I think you have seen on a label before. Okay, so you have the hydrolyzed proteins, you have your modified starches, you have your hydrogenated oil. So these are some things that will kind of fall more on the highly processed end. These are not things you would normally cook with or add to your cooking process. Hydrogenated oils, that's another code word for trans fat, which is definitely something we want to stay clear of for heart health purposes. You have your different colorants, you have your artificial colorings and flavorings, you have your sweeteners like fructose and high fructose corn syrup, which is it's a lot of controversy with that as well. Inverted sugar, maltodextrin, artificial sweeteners, so a bulking or foaming or gelling agents. Okay, then you have flavor enhancers. As far as MSG, okay, so we know that's MSG, but it's really just another fancy way of saying salt. Okay, it's just that when too much of it is used, of course, it poses a health risk. So these are just some of the things that you will see on the ingredient list that will tend to shift things to a more of a more highly processed food. And so here are some additional examples. So now that you kind of have a general idea of what makes a food highly processed, let's talk a little bit more about which foods and beverages fall into this category. Now, this is not an all-inclusive list, but it covers quite a bit. It'll kind of give you an idea of what we're speaking about. So sugary sweetened beverages such as carbonated drinks, so your sodas, your sugary coffee drinks, your energy drinks, your fruit punch. Okay, so we're not talking about 100% fruit juice. That's the good stuff. Okay, and so my plug-in for people who have younger kids, opt for the 100% fruit juice. Stay away from the fruit juices and the fruit punches and the honest and all that kind of good stuff, because you're not getting the nutrients that you need. So at least with the 100% juice, you're getting the nutrients, but you just need to limit it to 4 to 6 ounces. It kind of depends on the age of the child. So you want to limit it, and then they get the rest from the whole fruit. And you have your sweet and your savory, like your packaged sweets, like your cookies and your chips and things like that. That's the savory, the salty. Then you have your breakfast cereals like your Fruit Loops, your Tricks, your Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So things of that nature, things Frosted Flakes. That's another big one. So hopefully I'm stepping on too many toes with that one. Then you have your baking mixes such as stuffing. So that's really highly processed. Your cakes, your brownies, your cookie mixes. So especially if you're not making them from scratch. If you buy them in the store, they're very highly processed. Then you have your reconstituted meat. So you have your hot dogs and your fish sticks. Even though nowadays they're making them healthier, they're taking out the nitrates and they're not cured and things like that, but you have to read the label to know that. And then you have your frozen meals, such as your pizza, your TV dinner. So those are very obvious that those are highly processed. You have your sugary and your packaged, like your instant soups. very, very high in salt, very highly processed. Your candies, packaged breads and buns, but opt for the whole grain when it comes to the bread. So at least you're getting some nutrients there. And then, of course, you can get the kind that they have stored in the freezer. Those are less processed as well. Then you have your energy and protein bars and shakes. So I know this is a very big thing for people who are trying to lose weight, trying to be health conscious, but it's a supplement, it's artificial. So it's better to opt for the real deal. You have your meal replacement shakes, your powders that are meant for weight loss. So those are highly processed. And then better off to make your own smoothies and things like that. Your box pastas and products. So these are the ones that are flavored. So we're not talking about the ones that are in their whole form, but the ones that are flavored. And then, of course, we have some of our favorites like ice cream and sweetened yogurt. So not all yogurt is highly processed. So it's the sweetened ones that have a lot of the added sugar in it. And then things like margarine and spreads and things like that. But hey, it's a balance. So I'm not saying you're not going to eat any of this stuff, but just kind of give you an idea of what's kind of more on that highly processed spectrum. And so with all of that being said, what are your favorites? What are some of your favorite highly processed foods? Okay. Even if you don't eat it but every now and then, but name one or two that you have on a regular basis. So for me, bread. So that's one that I eat on a very regular basis. When I do the hot dog buns or the hamburger buns, I do opt for the whole grain version. Kind bars, okay. Kind bars is one that's very popular, but there's a lot of different kind of kind bars out there for those that are familiar. You have the kind that are like a candy bar, and then you have the kind that are more natural in state, which it doesn't have a lot of the added sugar, which is the nuts and spices line. So I like those too, but it's still a level of processing there going on. As far as a vegetable spread, I like the olive oil. So any kind of vegetable spread is going to, even though it's healthy, heart healthy fats that's in it, and it's not like the real butter, but it's still processed. It's still processed. And then occasionally I'll have some chips. I like the Belvitas, so those are very highly processed, right? And then as far as candy goes, I'll do like the fun size Snicker bars and things like that. So it's a balance, you have to weigh it all out and what's good to you and enjoy it. All right, so I see some people here, they do the hot dog, sausages with bread. Exactly. And so that's two for one. So you got the bread and you have the sausage. But again, you're doing this every now and then. If the problem is when we're doing this day after day after day, and we don't have any of our nutrient rich foods, which are the whole foods we're getting from our five food groups. So that's where the problem comes in. So it's that 80/20 rule. And so an important news flash, though, you don't have to completely avoid highly processed foods to have an overall healthy eating pattern, overall healthy body, lose weight, maintain your weight. You don't have to cut it all out. But of course, we want the scale to where your nutrient rich foods outweigh the fun food. And so food is one of life's, main sources of enjoyment, right? So we want to ensure that we have a balance because we want to fellowship and enjoy as well as make sure that our body doesn't completely suffer. So it's perfectly healthy to enjoy your favorite snack, have your ice cream, have your cookie, as long as it's a balance. Okay, that's what it's all about, having a balance. And that's what I really express with my clients because when you're dieting, they just cut all that stuff out. And then what do? You think about it, you want it, especially if you're going too cold turkey way too early in the process to where you're not mentally ready to go that route. And so there's a way that you want to handle that to where it lasts long term. Okay. And so it's very important to frequently consume because if you do frequently consume highly processed foods over a period of time, it will have a negative impact and it will affect your health. It will make you feel more sluggish, make you feel more bloated, and it will result in weight gain. It will make it difficult to lose weight. So you want to make sure that the nutrient dense outweighs. All right, so let's bring this on home. So let me check for some comments. And we're going to talk about what is considered ice cream. Okay, yep, ice cream. I like to have my ice cream too. Absolutely. And they have different, and also they have all these different ways of making ice cream. When you opt for fat-free and sugar-free and things like that, I mean, that's more processed than the already highly processed regular version. So you have to really think about that stuff. When they pull things out, they got to replace it with something in order for it to for the product to still look and taste and feel like the real deal. So think about that. Think about that. And so, what are considered healthy foods? So, in general, like I had mentioned, your fresh vegetables, your fruits, your pasteurized milk. So, yes, cow's milk, chicken, fish, beans, eggs are considered unprocessed or minimally processed. Okay, when of course it's until when it's fresh, until you start cooking it and adding other things, and that's a whole another ball game. And this is because these foods have gone through minimal processing before you buy them or before you even harvest them yourself. And so we commonly refer to these as whole foods. So this is what we mean when we say whole foods. This is what I mean when I say clean eating. You want to eat foods that are as close to their natural form as possible. Okay. And I always share with my clients, you want to do the 80-20 rule. So it's not necessary to put yourself through these extreme restrictions, deprivations, these diets, the low carbs, the juicing, as thinking that that's the only way that you can reverse a medical condition or to get the weight off. No, you don't, because it's sometimes it's a short-term fix or a band-aid, but then long-term it backfires. And you're not learning how to eat. And the whole key is to learn how to eat so that you can handle yourself in all different situations. And so in the longer term goal is really all about keeping your sanity, controlling your cravings, okay? Because that's what really the restrictions do to you. It increases your cravings. You want to have optimal health. You want to have optimal fitness, and you want to be able to manage your weight. So it's great to lose it, but what good is it if you gain it back? So we want to keep it off, right? And so here are some examples of some healthy whole foods. So in addition to the fruits and the vegetables, and that includes frozen. Okay, so a lot of times people ask me, is frozen fruits good or frozen vegetables good? Yes, because it's called flash freezing. So early in the process, in the distribution process, it gets flash frozen, so it's still relatively in its fresh state, and it preserves that. So yes, the texture is not as crunchy when you're dealing with like vegetables and things like that, but it is the nutrients are intact and it's not processed. Okay, it's very minimally processed, and then or unsweetened dried produce or unsweetened dried fruit. Okay, that is in its whole state. A lot of times people think raisins and dates and apricots and things like that are loaded with sugar and they're not healthy. But no, it's natural. It's natural. It's just more concentrated. The water has been taken out, so it's in a more concentrated state, but it's still a healthy choice in moderation. That's what's key, in moderation. Then you have your grains, such as your brown rice, your quinoa, your buckwheat. You have your legumes, such as beans and lentils. You have your root vegetables, like your potatoes, your cassava, your sweet potatoes, things like that. You have your lean protein, your meat, your poultry, your fish, your eggs. All of these are minimally processed. You have your pasteurized milk and your plain yogurts and even the flavored yogurts, depending on the brand and depending on the amount, those are minimally processed. And then you have your 100% fruit juice as well as your vegetable juice, okay? Because it is natural. It does not have added sugar. It's natural. If it had added sugar, then they could not say 100% fruit juice, okay? So that's another key there. Herbs and spices. So herbs and spices are naturally sodium free. Okay, so it's great to cook for those. They're plant-based, and so they provide many nutrients. So you don't need to take all these different supplements for all these different herbs and spices. Just cook with them on a regular basis, and then you'll get it. Your coffee and your tea, when it's not loaded with sugar and creamer and other things like of that nature. And caffeine, you do want to cap it. You don't want to just have unlimited caffeine all day, but you can incorporate a certain amount into a healthy eating pattern. And you have your nuts and your seeds. Now, with your nuts and your seeds in your natural state, doesn't have salt, doesn't have chocolate, doesn't have sugar, it doesn't have honey roasted. We're talking about in its natural state. Okay, so those are some examples of some healthy whole foods. So let me see. I see some comments coming through. Okay, all righty. So I'm up to date with the comments. And so my question, as we bring this on home, which whole foods do you need to add more of? Okay, so I have the list here. Fresh, more. We'll go with the pasteurized milk because most of the milk that we will find here are pasteurized. So fresh milk, you got to be careful with that. Plain yogurt or flavored yogurt. So I'll add that as well. You can do flavored yogurt also. You have your starchy root vegetables, your potatoes, your cassava, things like that, corn, things like that. Your lean meats, your legumes, your nuts, your seeds, I have on here herbs and spices. So what do you feel like you need to add a little bit more of into your life to kind of help round things out? Variety is the key to maximizing the amount of nutrients that your body gets from food. I believe in a multivitamin, a basic multivitamin that supplements your food that you eat, not replace. And so that is a mistake that many people make. Some people have like 12 different supplements they're taking. Like, no, your body absorbs it better from food. There's cases when we need supplement, but in most situations, food will provide what we need. And no one food has it all. So that's why it's important to eat around the 5 food groups and your healthy fats, and to eat different foods within the food group. So don't just have chicken all the time. Chicken provides a limited amount of nutrients. You get different things from fish, different things from red meat, different things from lean pork, different things from all the different various cuts. Okay. And so I purposefully listed, more of the less common picks here. That's because I know people will tend to stay away from these. So which ones can, as a goal for yourself to add to your routine, is to start incorporating bit by bit by bit. Okay. So I will look for comments on that one. Think about it. Yeah, it may take a little while for people to comment, because you're gonna have to scratch your head and figure out which ones am I gonna add. Alrighty. So more insight on whole foods and the term healthy. Okay, so post yes if you stop eating granola in the name of eating healthier. So if you was a granola eater, whether it was the granola bars or the loose granola, how many have kind of said, no, too much sugar, no, it's not healthy? So be honest. And so items that are made from whole foods. So this is where that gray area comes in. Items that are made from whole foods, like granola, because granola are made from oats, right? You have dried fruit without the added sugar. You have some dried fruit that does have added sugar, but not all of them, like raisins and apricots and things like that. They are natural. Then you have your polenta, which is made from whole cornmeal. Okay, all of these are considered, believe it, minimally processed. Therefore, they are healthy. The key is motivation in incorporating that into an overall adequate, well rounded eating pattern. And that's the part that's really great for a lot of people. And so, additionally, they got oils. You have your oils, such as your olive oil and your avocado oil, which they're derived from whole foods as well, right? You have olives and avocados. And so, they are a healthy choice. So, you got to think about where food is derived from also. And so we'll chat a little bit more about the term healthy. So the term healthy in regards to food is problematic in a lot of cases at times, because it can demonize foods that are considered processed. Okay, so rather than use the word healthy, um, describe a food is better to use the term nutrient dense, which that's going to refer to the foods that are more whole. It's going to, in their whole state, you're getting your nutrients, you're getting your fiber, you're getting all the things that that food has to offer. And it's packed with a lot of nutrients per gram. And in general, minimally processed foods and unprocessed foods, or less processed foods, are more nutrient dense than our highly processed foods. Okay, our highly processed foods are more, what we say in my field, energy dense, meaning it's going to have a lot of calories, it's going to have a lot of the unhealthy fats, it's going to have a lot of the sugar, it's going to have a lot of the other things, but it's not providing a lot of nutrients. So it's energy dense, but it's not nutrient dense. It's nutrient poor in that case. And so, for an example, homemade soup made with chicken and vegetables and brown rice. And I say with soups, because this is where the soups have a downfall in restaurants, is because of the salt. And a lot of it's because of the broth. So you do with the low sodium broth or the no salt added broth, and then you add your herbs and spices to make it palatable for you. And that is what we considered nutrient rich, and it's a good healthy soup, versus something that you'll get from a can, which we know that's super processed, or in a box, or even in a restaurant, because they're not really taking into account the sodium and things of that nature. Okay, so that's something to think about. That's something to think about. All righty. So I hope you all found this insightful. And so the main differences in summary is there's several differences between the minimal processed and foods that are highly processed. And so just to kind of clarify some of the main ones, calories in highly processed foods tend to be much higher in calories than whole minimally processed foods. Okay, so you eat more of your nutrient rich foods, but it's lower in calories per serving, and so you're eating. That's why it seems like you're eating more. And then you have your sugar contents, your sugary foods, which of course we know are very highly processed, and because of the amount of sugar that they have added. So you think of your sweets and things of that nature. And then highly processed foods are low in fiber. They're very low in fiber. They're low in protein. They're low in vitamins and minerals, and they're typically higher in salt. And they and then but there are exceptions. Okay, so this is where being a skillful label reader and proficient in food is really essential, because you don't want to discount a food that's really a healthy choice, but because you may have kind of gotten a little trumped up with some of the words on the label or the marketing for that matter. Okay, and so there are major differences between the highly processed foods and the minimally processed foods, and so you want to opt for your nutrient having a healthy nutrient dense pattern that's low, not cutting it out completely, but we just want to have, we want to limit the amount of the highly processed foods. And you don't have to avoid it completely to live a healthy lifestyle. If I said I didn't eat anything processed or highly processed, then I'm not telling the truth. And so building healthy eating habits that happen over time, you organically will weed out a lot of the less healthy foods or the more highly processed foods, because your body's just not going to really want it. So you're going to become more selective in your highly processed foods that you choose. And then you're going to have a balance. You're going to have a balance between your whole foods while you're still enjoying your favorite snack foods or your candy or your ice cream or whatever it may be. And it's okay. It is absolutely okay. And so I know a lot of you probably have the big question is, well, how do you apply this particular information? And so maybe you've tried to avoid many of your favorite foods, or you wasn't unsure of if a food was as close to its natural state as possible, which is very common. Or maybe you think a particular food is natural. Like I was talking to somebody recently, actually, and she was sharing with me how she does diet cranberry juice, and I was like, well, better to do the regular cranberry juice, the 100% cranberry juice. But of course, she was doing that to cut calories. But think about it, diet stuff is processed. I mean, they're adding things to it to make it diet, and so because you want it to taste good, so it's artificial sweeteners in there, and there's things in there. So it's all about really. We may think that we're eating healthy, but in essence, we're eating a lot of diet food or foods that are more in a supplement state versus in a whole state. So think about that. So it's just, we don't know what we don't know. So it's really about getting the understanding of really what food is and really what it is not. And so I encourage you to kind of get an idea of some healthy eating and some healthy options. You definitely have a good example here with this 3-day meal plan. It's highly nutrient dense. Okay, so I recommend downloading it. You will see a variety of fruits and vegetables. You'll see nuts, you'll see seeds, you'll see various grains, you'll see beans, you'll see various protein options, oils. You'll even see maple syrup. You'll even see that, as well as some various herbs and spices to kind of give you an idea of how you can shake things up, how you can eat healthy and it still tastes delicious and it's not boring and it's not bland and things like that. So I'm gonna put this link in the chat because I know you all cannot click on banners, but you can see it and definitely give it a try for 3 days. For 3 days, and I've had people share with me, I felt good after 3 days. I felt really good, and they were really surprised. So definitely give it a try, and just to see how you can incorporate the different whole foods, because a lot of it's just matter, how do I do it? How do I make it all work? How do I combine all the food groups? And so when these meals are fast, they're easy, they're delicious, and I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And I would love to hear your feedback. So don't hesitate to DM me to let me know how you like it. And so I thank you all for tuning in with this week's with It's All About Choices, a holistic nutrition, fitness, and weight management academy. I would like for you to step into your highest level of health so you can feel better and have more energy. And one way to do that is building healthier eating habits is the magic key to weight loss, keeping it off, as well as total body wellness. And so again, in 2022, we want to break those food strongholds so we're not stress eating and emotional eating and things of that nature and eating out of comfort. And so next week, we are going to continue on the favorite topics and we are going to talk more about juice. Okay, so we're going to talk more about 100% fruit juice. Does it hinder or does it promote your health in general? and weight loss. So stay tuned for that. And so do you avoid, or have you been avoiding fruit juice because you feel like it has too much added sugar? Think about that over the next week. And so mark your calendars and tune in. I have some shocking news for you to share. Again, proficient food knowledge is power to maintaining this thing for life and making it a lifestyle. So bye for now. Have a great rest of your day, and blessings and healthy regards.